And so you'll pull it once and you'll activate the thing, and one or more pulls will go by before that device finishes firing. And then maybe it will fire back the other way at the end, and maybe it won't. So single pulls generally, unless you specifically know that you want to be repeat pulling a lever for some reason, don't repeat pull them. Pull them once and make sure you know what it's doing. We don't have this floodgate yet. Okay, need to add this floodgate then. Okay, at this point they can go around the long way if they have to get access to the floodgate here. And once they've sealed this up and linked this floodgate to the new lever, then I think finally we'll be ready to fire the caster. For real. No, for real this time, guys. For real. And this is not even what I would consider a mega project. This is an obsidian caster, something I will build in every fort that I ever do, as long as I have access to lava. Reasonable access to lava, I guess I should say. If we embark somewhere with a volcano, it's possible I would be doing an obsidian caster like almost immediately, because it's with a river and a volcano nearby. It's incredibly easy to build a gravity-fed obsidian caster. It's a bridge and 2 floodgates and a door, and you're done. Some levers and mechanisms, and that's the whole of it. It's almost nothing in terms of mechanics to build. I have to suspend this job for a moment. There's a guy coming down the hallway with the floodgate that I need in place, and if this guy builds that wall first, which he was going to, that guy's going to have to turn around and go the long way back the other way. So we're just going to wait a minute, let the floodgate get in, let this get linked up, then we'll unsuspend that job, and it will be completed, and we'll be good. Were I somewhat more awake and alert, this probably would not be such an involved, complex, and fucked up process, but unfortunately you're getting me after 25 hours now of, falling asleep on the Switch on 4 hours or 5 hours of sleep the previous night. I stayed up too long last night playing Cryptark. So besides Dwarf Fortress, what all of you out there been playing that you've really found enjoyable recently? What's new out there in the game world as we come down to the end of this and we're about to wrap it up? I know I saw somebody commented earlier that they bought Stonehearth. I've been looking at that. It's in my follow list on Steam. I've been watching it for a long time. And as long as they keep making progress, it's probably going to be something I'll pick up at some point. I'm a big fan of god games like Dwarf Fortress or War for the Overworld or Populous. Oh, those damn Osprey in the cages. I've got my completely skillless animal trainers basically training them to domesticated states and then back to wild, and then domesticating them again and back to wild so we can get their training up a little bit. See, now I don't really go in for now. This is my personal thing, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm running your taste down at all. So bear with me. Um, the management games have never really struck me. I don't know why. As fond as I am of uh, Dwarf Fortress, which is effectively a giant management sim, stuff like football franchise manager and soccer franchise manager and that stuff just doesn't appeal to me. I don't know why. And that'll get the last one linked up. That's not another game. That's, oh well, maybe it is to some folks, I guess. When I was younger, I used to think it was a game. Nowadays, I guess I'm getting a little burned out on programming. I enjoy solving the problems, but I don't necessarily enjoy the work in implementing the solutions. A lot of poking and prodding and trial and error to get things running the way they should. Oh yes, I have no illusions that Dwarf Fortress is anything other than a management sim. I say that. A management sim with some real-time strategy aspects, I guess is really what I would say. Most of the god game genre, as differentiated from those of the management genre, has some form of rudimentary, at the very least, real-time strategy elements or mechanics involved in them. You look at Populous 1 or Populous 2, for example, and at the end of the day, they're basically real-time strategy games where you can't command your minions quite so directly, where you're limited in terms of your inputs and your controls. I have played a lot of RimWorld. I gotta say I'm looking forward to where that's going. That looks like it's going a lot of places. The difference I would say between RimWorld and Dwarf Fortress is that Dwarf Fortress is shooting very heavily for the simulationist end of things, and RimWorld is very clearly aware that, it's in the gamist end of things. There's some simulation done, but it's really just in support of a more enjoyable game and not really the end-all be-all purpose. And I think a lot of what Toady is doing is simulation to support, not necessarily from a game perspective, but simulation just for simulation's sake, because the whole purpose is to be a simulation. Yeah, like I said, I've looked at RimWorld. That's one I would recommend to folks who like the god game genre. If you like Dwarf Fortress, you'll like RimWorld. You really will. Assuming you can handle the pseudo sci-fi, or I don't know, what is it? Retro sci-fi? Not quite. The sci-fi western feel. It's got kind of that Firefly or maybe even Farscape a little bit feel, where the world is all sorts of different things all mashed together at once, and it doesn't necessarily make, on the surface, the most logical sense, but once you start to see how the world is put together, it does. Effectively, RimWorld posits that the galactic civilization is in a constant state of massive upheaval, with stuff rising and falling all the time, and civilizations on the way up and the way down simultaneously. And I don't mean in a small sense. I mean very much in the your civilization is coming to an end at the same time someone else is achieving transcendence kind of thing. I had to think for a minute what I was actually trying to do there. I'm trying to pull the lever. Genius. Come on. Okay, as soon as somebody else comes around and pulls the lever, we'll check to make sure that all of our valves are open at that point. And that means we know that all of our mechanics work. up, down, close, open, that kind of stuff is all in place. See, and when it comes to shooters, I actually tend to back down off my urge to want simulationist. You know, I prefer the arena shooters, Team Fortress 2, Quake, you know, even stuff like Unreal Tournament. The more realistic they try to get, the more simulationist I feel that they try to get, the less that it tends to appeal to me. I'm not sure exactly why. I guess that's kind of the, if I really wanted to live or experience the, you know, that simulationist shooter, I guess I would have said, you know, I'd just go and roll in the military. I don't really want to experience it quite that much. So I'm not sure if that's what it is, or if there's something more to it, if there's something else that I'm just not catching in terms of my preference there. I don't necessarily think that Fallout 4 is the best game ever, but as an example, I would generally prefer a game like Fallout 4 to something like Call of Duty or Battlefield. But I liked PlanetSide, which doesn't really try to be realistic per se. It sort of hedges simulationist, but it's clearly gamey. Okay, and our guy is on the way to build this last wall, at which point we'll forbid and hide all the stone in the system. We don't want anybody trying to get in there to get rocks. Those rocks need to be off limits after they have, once the casting process is ready to start. You want nothing in the caster that anyone is going to come and get at any point. Not in the water tunnels, not in the lava tunnels, none of it. Forbid it, hide it, and forget it exists. Well, no, I don't necessarily mean that they are. I mean, compared to Arma, especially, you know, I mean, obviously COD and Battlefield are not Arma, as an example. But if you look at them on a continuum, Team Fortress 2 is a whole lot more game-like than I would say is Call of Duty or Battlefield, and Call of Duty or Battlefield is significantly more game-like than is Arma. Arma is way heavy over on the shooting for realistic side, and Team Fortress 2 is a lot further out the other way. And Battlefield and Call of Duty are in the middle, but in my opinion, they fall closer to the realistic side of that axis. They are aiming for a very pseudo-realistic feel. They want you to feel like this is a realistic modern-day Battlefield, even though obviously there are aspects of it that are still gamey. They're still shooting for that feel, I honestly think, especially if you compare to something like Team Fortress 2, where people are rocket jumping around and throwing jars of milk and urine around. It's very clearly not the same kind of experience. And to be honest, I've never played Arma, so I can't say I'm not criticizing Arma. I feel when I look at a first-person shooter, though, that if I move down that scale and Call of Duty is starting to feel too simulationist, even though I acknowledge fully that it's a very gamey game, even though I acknowledge that, it still starts to hedge too realistic, too simulationist for my taste. I'm not sure why. It's like you said, it's very clearly gamey. I mean, it's kill streaks and you know, calling down chopper care packages, for crying out loud. You know. And I've never played Mount and Blade Warband. I did Pirates, Vikings, and Knights for a while, for a brief while. Okay, did we get that walled in? Okay, so let's get this stuff all forbidden now. DB forbid. So there's forbidden and hidden, and all that stuff disappears and effectively becomes non-existent. Dwarves can't see it. Dwarves can't touch it. Does not exist. Now, all the stone inside the caster is not really a big deal. That stuff's going to go away here in a moment. So the stuff on the floor of the caster, I won't bother with. But the stuff in here, at some point we'll want to clear out or deal with. We can leave it for now. It's not in the middle of the caster. It's not going to interfere with the casting process at all, so that's okay. We won't touch that stuff either. And that that's it. Everything else in the system is clean. I've already gone through the piping here, and the lava system has already been locked off and forbidden, so there's nothing in there that they're trying to get to. This area theoretically is going to be safe, so I'm not going to worry about forbidding that stuff. If it turns out that there's a lava flood here, I'm going to forbid the door, and then I'll worry about hiding the rocks later. That should give us everything we need to get this party started. We need to close all the valves first before we begin, and then at that point we will open the valves in sequence and close them in sequence to make sure that everything runs smoothly. So the only lever we didn't pull here is the dwarf access lever. That actually opens this door if I've got it set correctly. And right now it's locked. I don't want anyone in the caster, so I want the door locked. In fact, I want to check and make sure there's no access to the caster in other ways, because if there is, I want to start restricting that. I don't want people getting into the caster accidentally. Now, give me a second. I'm going to step away for just a second. I'll be right back. Okay, now, if I've done this correctly, I should be able to look at the caster, and all my valves should be closed. That's the lava valve should close once the levers start getting pulled. I mean, the lava valve should close. The water precision and water release valves should close. The power core valve and main intake valve should all close. And if they're all closed, then we're ready to begin. So there is technically access to the inside of the caster. If they really want to get there, they can do it. They can come across this staircase, pass by the pump, go into the channel here, go back around, come back up into the water channel, at which point they would have access to this inner area here. And I did intend to allow access to that area, so it's understandable if it's still there. We need to be cautious that nobody's in there, that we don't allow anything in there that would draw people into the service entrance. The only reason I allow access into that area at all is in case I need to maintenance the mechanisms for some reason, and I don't even know what that reason would be. I need these ramps there at that point to allow people to get in and out, but that's pretty much it. I mean, there's not really any good reason to go in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to lock this, we're going to take all these stones and hide them and forbid them, because I don't care about those, few little rocks laying around here. It's not a big deal. And then we're going to forbid this door. If we need to have somebody come in later, we can unlock it for them. There's nothing at this point that's on this other side of this door that I want anybody to be able to get access to. Now notice, in addition to the global commands, you can, in the item list, select things and forbid them and hide them directly. So you can go into the list and forbid and hide stuff there as well, which is what we're doing here when I'm forbidding and hiding these things individually. There. All right, so the lava valve is closed. That's good. I haven't seen these close yet. That's not good. The main intake is closed. That's good. I'll bet we still have a lot of pull lever jobs that haven't finished yet. Well, maybe not. Wow. Not working according to plan here, huh? Let's close the main release valve here and see if maybe I just missed it. Nope, it's definitely open. Migrants. Welcome to the Balls of Steel Hauler Brigade. It's your job to haul our balls around. We'll see if we can catch any fish in our well. I think we've only got the one fisherman, so if he spends the rest of his days idle and chattering, that's no big deal. We can afford a few idlers around the fort at this point. We've got plenty of labor. You're definitely a textile worker with clothes working skill like that. And most of the rest of this stuff I could probably just ignore or do without. Most of it's just not all that important. We've got a ton of glass makers already, for example. We're up to 6 glass workers. We don't really need any more. This guy is technically better than some of ours, but not enough so that it's really worth worrying about. If he was a 10 or even an 8, I'd probably be worried about replacing one of my guys, but not for a 6. It's not really that worth. They're going to make enough glass that they'll catch up before much longer. And so we've got some mercenaries then who are defending us, the Hammerman and Mace Man, and they can be organized into squads, but you can't assign them any labors normally. I can't make these guys do butchering or fishing. I can only let them do their soldiering work. They'll eat our food and drink our booze, but they'll also defend our fortress with their lives, so it's kind of a fair trade. They're just unassignable soldiers at that point. The only thing you can do is oh, the secret to being this coherent after 25 hours? I'm insane. That's the secret. I thought you knew. I thought it was obvious. Didn't realize it was a secret. After all, I've played Dwarf Fortress for 25 hours. Bathroom breaks and, occasional runs for a soda aside, I've been sitting at this keyboard for that period of time, and I'm not done yet. I've got to finish what I started here. So, let's see, where were we? We were going to go down here. Oh, we need to fix that too while I'm at it. That's something I started to fix earlier and never quite got around to. There's a corner that we kind of covered up too fast before we finished digging the hole. No, man, I'm just this coherent because I'm doing this for a good cause. That's the thing. It's keeping me motivated, keep me focused as best it can. Although you got to admit, after 25 hours, you start to get a little fuzzy, whether you want to or not. As soon as the miner digs this hole, we'll mark it for a floor and get this covered back up because we don't want to leave that hole open. Some flying beastie could come in there. Goblins could theoretically climb straight in because they can climb down and onto the first floor, no problem. It's just dirt. easy climb. But it'll take a minute for our miner to work his way out of the door here. This is probably him on his way out right there. Now, you could probably be further along if you did a few things. I like to play on a 4x4 because I like having extra space to play with in terms of around my fort. I really do like the bigger embark solely because it's nice to be able to see around my castle and not feel like my castle is butting up on the edges at any given moment. But the larger space also means a larger frame rate hit. We're already under 20 frames a second. A stream means additional frame rate hit. If you can embark somewhere with just pawns and make do, you're better off. There's a challenge, of course, involved in that you have to make sure you have water. You're not going to be able to do the sort of massive water works that I'm doing here unless you can pump water out of the caverns, for example, or you have an aquifer. In terms of avoiding frame rate hit, you can cut down on your population. I believe we are now at what our pop cap is. 144 is our pop, and we have a pop cap, soft pop cap of 150. So we may get a few more migrants, but that'll be it. We won't get any more after that. And visitor cap of 50, I don't ever intend to hit. It may have a cap, but I'm not intending to ever get there. And even if we got a giant wave with our last wave of migrants, we wouldn't go over 220, and this is pretty high. Especially if we start getting a massive siege in at the same time. That's going to be 300 plus just sentients and invaders wandering around. That's not going to count any of my pets or livestock who are also pathing around and chewing up pathfinding resources, and we'll take frame rate hits for all of that. Generally speaking, anytime you move something, you're going to endure a hit to it, and the more things that are moving, the more hits. The further distance they're traveling, the more the hit, and so on and so forth. So compact, tight fortresses are not just more efficient, they survive better against frame rate death. So watch my calculation frame rate just plummet. Thud. 18 frames a second. We're down to 18. Why is this guy... What is up with this? What? Seriously? Got a problem here, dude? Should you be in bed, like, you know, resting, letting somebody else do this, maybe? Just a thought. The good news is after he punches this hole, he'll probably be able to walk down if he really... or climb down if he really wants to. Definitely a fastest way back in. 64-bit DF is not the solution to the frame rate problem, unfortunately. It will help in some respects because 32-bit can run out of memory at 3 gigs and just crash out, and you can't load it anymore. At that point, your game is simply too large to load in 32 bits of RAM, and it won't work. 64-bit will get around that because you'll have a significantly larger addressable memory space, but that does not help you with frame rate death. Dwarf Fortress is a single core process. It's running on one core of my processor. Well, I'm running a multi-core processor. There's like, you know, I could be doing 8 Dwarf Fortresses at once, theoretically. It really couldn't because I'd have to have some overhead for the operating system and other tasks behind the scenes, but I could probably run 2, and I don't know that you'd really notice the hit, provided they stayed to their own cores. No, that wasn't a constructed floor. That was a regular grass floor, and we mined it out. And now this little spot here will be light indoors or whatever, light above ground. Let's see. What happened was when I did this initially, I did these little 10 rectangles, you know, 5x2 rectangles, 2 of them, pairs, with a split down the middle so that nothing caves in. And when I built the floors on a couple of these spots, the mining hadn't been done on some of them, and the squares were left over. So underneath the constructed floor, there was a natural floor that we had to mine out. So we deconstructed it, mined it, and now I've told them to build a new one. And the guy that's doing it's on the way, so we're in good shape. DF actually works reasonably well. I'm not sure how elegant the code base behind the scenes is. That I could not honestly tell you. I have never run it through a decompiler. I've never looked at, decompiled code. That's a little beyond my means, if you will. But it works okay. It provides a great game. It's free. It's clearly an inspiration or a reference for a wide variety of the genre. I've seen references in numerous other games, and it clearly is inspired by and has inspired other games as well. Come on, guys, get that block out there. Close that hole. So, in terms of kind of saving ourselves some frame rate hit, there's some things I can do. We've got these big mining tunnels that go out here that lead out to all this ore. And realistically, I don't expect to need all these little tiny clusters of gems and the occasional boulder that's still out there. So, I mean, cast a look down these corridors and there's a few gems here and there, probably not worth worrying about. I can basically just throw a wall up and seal that off so it's no longer pathfinding in that space. And that will help a little bit. And every time I can close off a little bit of the pathfinding to limit where it's tracking, and that's animals, people, everything that's having to move around, every time I can limit down the pathfinding a little bit, my frame rate will improve slightly. Now, we may not be noticeable until I've done several improvements, but we would get an improvement out of it. If I take a bunch of items that we have on site and I sell them at a huge loss to the caravan and get them off site, that will help. It will reduce the memory overhead that we're dealing with a little bit. It's just serial processing. You got to figure there's a rendering phase where it displays one tick, and then between rendering phases there's one or more calculation phases that occur where it's computing where things move. And so you're only seeing about a fourth of the actual action that's going on behind the scenes. If your frame rate looks like this, for example, you're getting 25 graphical updates a second, but there are 100 frame calculation updates being done per second behind the scenes. And then it just does it serially. A wall to block them off is better than restricted pathing. Restricted pathing will help, especially if you... I mean, I could use restricted pathing here, and if I use the log strips, since I've got 27 per square, this will really make this stuff out long. The catch is that you'll get degenerate pathing, where if they suddenly need this boulder to do a job, it's going to basically pathfind 90% of the map before it finally crosses over this little tiny stretch of restricted space and gets out into here to find that boulder. It will pathfind most of the map at that point. 27 squares per tile, and there's, call it 15 tiles there. You do the multiplication, that's how many tiles it would... to be honest, I think that depends on whether you use high traffic areas or not. If you intend to use high traffic areas, I wouldn't touch it, and I don't know that the impact of that really is all that meaningful. I turned mine up a little bit. 13927 actually is what I used. Just means that every step up is a power of 3 more expensive in terms of pathfinding. It means restricted is about the same, but still more expensive. It means that my high cost is, about double of what the normal high cost is, and my normal is about half again as much as normal. So high cost for me is where I want to keep my dwarves at, and at some point I have to go back and start mapping in traffic areas and things like that. That's not something I'm worrying about right now. I'm hoping we can run the Obsidian Caster without killing our frame rate completely. We're going to find out. Core is in place. Did we? I thought we linked this bridge. Did we not? Am I fucking hallucinating? Seriously? Is it? Did we just not get the last pull job done? I mean, really? It's linked to the Cobalt Bridge, that's for sure, so okay. Huh, definitely linked to the bridge. Yeah, I'm not sure that changing the pathfinding cost helps. I'd have to see some science on that one. I'm not familiar enough with their pathfinding algorithm to say that reducing the cost would actually help my frame rate. It's worth a shot. I mean, we can experiment with it right now. I don't have any pathfinding alterations. I don't have any higher restricted terrain on the map right now. So let's try that. Why not? You've seen that I'm down to about 18 frames a second, so we'll save. Oh, fuck me. Of course it crashes when I go to save, because why not? Welp, let's see how much progress we just lost. Actually I do. The problem I have is that if I start to do it regularly, to be honest, guys, and I don't mean any offense against you, it starts to feel like a job, like I'm doing it out of a sense of obligation to continue, if you will. And the less spontaneous it is, the less enjoyable it is for me to do. You know, I'm never going to be some YouTube personality. You're never going to see me up there with PewDiePie or somebody with 1 million followers and you know, a giant YouTube bankroll rolling in every month. That's never going to happen. I cut my 9 to 5 and I'm okay with that. But no, I'm happy to stream stuff. If there's something you guys want to see, I mean, I know in the link down there below the stream, in the Reddit thread, I linked my Steam account. If there's something you guys want to see me demonstrate or whatever, if we're past 24 hours at this point, I've done my due diligence already. Um, Let me go ahead and change those pathfinding costs. Let's see if it improves my frame rate real quick. Actually, I can do that from here. Matter of moments to start the stuff up. That simple. 'To be fair, it's been probably close to a year since I last played Dwarf Fortress, to be honest. Um, it would have been version 42 at the very latest because I haven't played on version 43 prior to a couple of nights ago when I picked it up just to make myself aware of what had changed. Um, if you go back to the beginning of the video, 24 hours ago, I was picking my way through the workflow screen because I really hadn't messed with it too much. I picked up my trial fort and I ran it because I can run a vanilla fort in pretty much any circumstance. I mean, you can run the same layout I do and the same stuff I do without all of the automation features of workflow, without all of the handy tips and tricks. The basic design and layout I'm using is pretty well uh, staple or basic. You can use it anywhere. Yeah, and I didn't get to quantum stockpiles. I should probably demonstrate those before I log it out. That's a useful trick for a newbie, but it's kind of borderline exploity, so it's not something I usually lead with. Not sure. Didn't we just have a season not very long ago, though? I can't remember. Yeah, I should probably set it up so I've got some kind of more regular schedule so that you guys want to follow along can actually tune in and when I'm going to be broadcasting something. You'd have to put up with the fact that, a lot of the time I really kind of want to be ADD and not necessarily play the same game all night, so I'll play something for a couple of hours, then switch over to something different, play something completely off the wall. Um, in terms of stuff, petition. Yeah, entertainment. Yeah, you're out of here. Have a nice day. I've got enough entertainers. Um, in terms of what I've been playing recently, I mean, I've played stuff as different as Holy Potatoes, a weapon shop. I mentioned that I picked up Cryptark recently. I've been playing through Pillars of Eternity. I installed Borderlands 2 the other day to go back through it with somebody who said they got stuck at one point and never heard from them again, basically. So it's been sitting on my hard drive, but I haven't really tinkered with it much. I've got some time in Fallout 4 this past week while I've been on vacation. You know, Pillars is interesting. If you like the old Baldur's Gate RPGs, I think it's probably worth a look for you at that point. Gotta figure out why my Obsidian Caster's release or main release valve here is not reclosed. Definitely a bridge there. I'm not hallucinating. There is a bridge there. Bridge, open space. Okay, so if I pull that lever again, does the bridge go away? Is it just a graphics hang up with text will be text? I mean, that's possible, right? So, I mean, maybe? I don't just want to pour water into the top of my obsidian caster. I definitely want a properly controlled reaction, and I need that release lever to work. Well, to be honest, if you're playing Baldur's Gate or Baldur's Gate 2 today, it is kind of hard to wrap yourself into the mechanics like I would have. Wait a minute, there's a lever gone here. Why is there a lever gone here? My lever is gone. I had 5 levers here. This was my precision measurement lever. Or that was my precision measurement lever. I did have 5 levers. We're missing a lever. Um, maybe I didn't build that one yet. We did have a revert, so maybe that's what it is. I haven't built that one yet. Bet that's my problem. It does seem maybe like a slight difference, but remember we were further along, so I'm still floating around 24 frames a second, which is a little higher than I was, but not drastically so. Now, as far as Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 goes, if you're going to play them today, I strongly recommend you get the Tutu, the third-party changes for resolution, for example. Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2 actually look pretty good in, scaled up to modern resolutions. the graphics, which are fairly pixelated, once scaled back down to size, actually kind of pop out pretty well. It's not great. I mean, they're still dated and aged. You kind of have to deal with it a little bit, but okay, he's still in the staircase. That's fine. You know, we're all going to run. They're all going to laugh at you. Oh, he ran out of there and ran smack into a militia guy. What a day. Bummer. That's rough. Run right out of there and run smack into... Oh, smack. Got crushed. Death is all around us. This is horrifying. But not to him, because he's, you know, he's down with it. And that's a dead kobold right there. Yes, it is. Alright, so... Come on, guys. Get that lever built so I can get my precision measurement done so we can get this caster working. Planescape Torment. Awesome. Flat awesome. I honestly have to say I like that better than I did Baldur's Gate 1 or Baldur's Gate 2 for that matter. And that's... To folks who've played those, that's probably shocking praise, but I don't know what it was. Planescape's originality, uniqueness of setting, at the very least, was a substantial portion of my enjoyment. What you can't metagame Torment quite the same way you can Baldur's Gate. I mean, even if you don't have an intimate familiarity with the second edition Dungeons & Dragons rules, Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2 are fairly straightforward RPGs in the same way that Pillars of Eternity is. They follow a very classic mold that you can very easily kind of predict how things are going to work mechanically and how the world works mechanically. When you get into Planescape Torment, shit don't work the way you think it should. Just carrying certain items opens up doorways that weren't there before, that literally were invisible and intangible until you just happened to walk by them carrying the right item. And suddenly there's a place you'd never been before. It's a fantastic introduction to the setting, and to be honest, I'll be amazed if they ever touch that setting again. I don't honestly think that they'll ever be able to do it justice again. I mean, we'll see. I've got Tides of Numenera sitting in my library. I'm not going to play it until until after they've got a final release and it's gotten patched, because a game like that, I want to make sure I'm getting the, you know, quote final experience before I start playing and find out that I've hit a bug or that I've worked around something that they turn out to change later. So I want to give them a chance to come out with a proper finalized version of that before I go back through Numenera. But I've got that. I'm not sure I can necessarily put my finger on it, but I don't know whether it was the slightly less... I mean, because Torment's mechanics are the same mechanics as Baldur's Gate, really, at the end of the day, with the exception being, of course, that the Nameless one can't die and, you know, always comes back unless you do something plot-wise that's going to end the story. Yeah, I'm not sure. But, you know, I'm weird. I wanted to like Arcanum. I tried really hard. Really hard, but it was really not balanced well. Yeah, and to be honest, I think that's a big part of the reason. It's not the only reason. I have some mechanical reasons why, but it's a big part of the reason why I like Morrowind to a degree more than Skyrim and Oblivion. Definitely more than Oblivion, and Skyrim only starts to come in because the mechanics improvements of the two succeeding generations that Skyrim represents, two or two and a half succeeding generations of engine that Skyrim represents, make the game more fluid and, you know, enjoyable to play from a play standpoint. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Oh well. That wasn't quite what I had in mind. It's alright, we'll put a new one back together. But Morrowind's setting was indescribably unique. You know, how do I put this? I hit Morrowind when I first started playing EQ, okay? EverQuest 1. And Morrowind and EverQuest 1 have a very similar feel in a respect that's hard to nail down. You feel like when you step into them, the world is much larger than it first initially appears. And part of that is the relationship your character has with the setting. When you arrive in Morrowind, you are a nobody, and the world lets you know it. You are not the Chosen One. You are not the Dragonborn. You are not meeting Tiber Septim straight off the boat. You are nothing. You are the dirt beneath some Ordinator's heel that he just couldn't be bothered to scrape off. And the game rubs it all over you until you get with it. You really feel like you come up. In Oblivion, it really felt to a great degree, especially if you followed the main quest, that it felt a little preordained. And, you know, look, I played Morrowind, and Morrowind and Oblivion are both power fantasies, so let's not pretend that Morrowind was any less ordained than Oblivion in that sense. But Oblivion didn't do nearly as good a job of hiding it. Morrowind comes out, and it'll let you meander around for days, weeks, months without ever even, you know, seeing the main quest if you don't immediately go out and follow and track down oh shit, the guy in Balmora, Caius Cosades. There we go. Sorry, I'm getting tired, guys. You should be able to tell I'm having trouble remembering names in video games. That's not like me at all. The game will literally let you wander around for days, although it kind of, in text, points you to him at the very start. Unlike Oblivion and unlike Skyrim, whose quest markers then immediately kick in and say, you know, basically seize the player by the nose and drag them to, you know, that next point, that first point in the main quest. Unlike those, where this, you know, it drags you into the main quest kind of insistently. Morrowind doesn't insist that you follow the main quest at all. It turns you loose and says, have at it. The world is your oyster. Go experience it as you see fit. Grow or change, struggle, survive, or die as you like. It's your world now. Have fun. And I felt to a much greater degree in Morrowind that I was experiencing my version of their story rather than the same version of their story that everyone else is experiencing with a slightly different skill set. The limitations on guilds, so that you had to be, you know, trained to advance in a guild to get those higher level quests that they would, you know, to get those higher level services. You had to experience what it was to do things as a member of that guild. You had to be able to cast spells as a mage. You couldn't just go to the Mages Guild and cut everybody down with a sword and go, look, I'm the greatest mage ever because I can cast these 2 intro-level fire and ice spells. Woohoo! Thank you, Skyrim. That's awesome. You're the Mages Guild, you know, archmage, but you can cast 2 spells. Fire from, you know, jet and ice jet, and your destruction skill is 15. And you're the fucking archmage. Are you kidding me? I'm not suggesting that I like the grind aspects of it. That's not really what I'm getting at. It's just it's completely implausible. You start on top in Oblivion and Skyrim. You don't start at the bottom and work your way up. You start on top, and you work your way up from there. In Morrowind, you start at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. House cats can kill a Morrowind mage in a few hits. That 40 hit points is like one swing from a 2-handed weapon and you're dead on the spot. Yeah, Skyrim really phoned it in on a lot of their quests, and that was really sad because the improvement in the mechanics is palpable over Oblivion and Morrowind. It's just Skyrim is night and day better in terms of a gameplay mechanics standpoint, in terms of how smoothly everything runs and plays together. It's beautiful. It's well done. It really is. They deserve props for it. But their simplification of gameplay mechanics and their streamlining of story mechanics leaves the game very shallow. Broad as an ocean, deep as a puddle. And that's the problem that they inherited from Oblivion, and it's not a problem that they had in Morrowind. The Dark Brotherhood line wasn't unsatisfying, but it did feel like it wrapped up in a big damn hurry all at once. And that's not really a problem, because it really was supposed to. That was the climax of the thing, you know. I'm not a big fan of the Jester character. It's a little over the top. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. The assassin Jester who deals with the Night Mother in Oblivion, or in Skyrim. You'll remember who I'm talking about, I'm sure, but I can't remember his name. I'm too fucking tired at this point, and it's been too long. Cicero, thank you. God damn, I'm tired. He's a little over the top, and he's supposed to be a bit. And the problem is he's a little further over the top than I think he should have been, even on top of that. And it's little things with Skyrim. Aside from the massive problems I have with their streamlining and minimization of story and gameplay complexity, there's a few elements to the story. I mean, look at Hearthfire and your adoption of kids. Congratulations, you're a daddy. Here, take a kid. You want two? Here you go. You know, that's it. It's like a sticker to hang on the refrigerator. That's about as deep as it gets. And I don't know. I was expecting more out of them there. Sometimes it just feels like they're really phoning the content in, and you see it again with like Fallout 4. A lot of the Fallout 4 DLC was not quest and story and content DLC. It was just workshop stuff you could put in your settlements. That was it. It's just house mod. You know, well, shit, man. The fucking modders are cranking out house mods. I don't need Bethesda to do that. I want Bethesda to create a really good house at the beginning that I can actually use in the vanilla game, and then I want them to actually get down to the business of creating, you know, fucking Fallout 4 content, you know, story content in their world. It's their lore. I want to see what they can do with it. I want to see a New Vegas done in Fallout 4, and I didn't. I didn't get a New Vegas in Fallout 4. I was shocked how much of a step back it felt like in terms of story and narrative. I commented when I first got Fallout 4, my big comment was, as I'm walking out of the vault, your kid's going to be the villain or the plot twist. I said, this is basically, when you stop to look at it, this is basically Fallout 3 in reverse. I mean, they basically took Fallout 3 and reversed it. Instead of, you know, being a kid looking for your dad, you're a dad looking for your kid. Well, whoop-de-doo, it's the same fucking plot. It's just backwards. New Vegas doesn't even pretend to be in the same vein as 3 or 4. It's, here, you're a blank slate. The only detail we're going to provide for you is that at some point you were a courier. That's it. You could have been anything before that. You could have been anything on the side of that. Any kind of person, any kind of... the sky's the limit. It's wide open. Your story. And the dialogue. Oh my god. Oh my god, please God, kill me. I don't fucking need a goddamn voiced protagonist. I really don't. I played Morrowind, guys. I played Half-Life. I don't need a voiced companion. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned. I just don't. In a Call of Duty or Battlefield kind of game where the story is not going to be particularly deep, there's one path through it. Hey, go all out. Have a voiced protagonist. I'm already playing your story, so it doesn't matter that I'm playing your character in that story. But when you start voicing the protagonist, you've crossed a threshold somewhere. It's very hard to keep it generic. And the problem I really run into a lot in Fallout 4 is, truthfully, even on my first playthrough, I didn't give a flying fuck about the potato maggot in the crib. I really didn't. The game does nothing to engender any sort of sympathy or concern from you for that character. None. There's a baby in swaddling clothes. You see it for 30 seconds. Your spouse carries it in with you. You're frozen. They take it. That's it. That's your some exposure to this thing that you're supposed to care about. And when the MacGuffin doesn't have a draw, Holy shit. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. It's kind of